Most of you guys are sure that Israel is in a very hostile location in the Middle East, and you probably wondering why did they go there in the first place. And today we're going to break down how they actually had other options to go to different parts of the world. Why didn't those go into effect? What would have happened if they would have went to Madagascar, Uganda, or Argentina? And how would the geopolitics be shaped if those decisions were made in the world today? I'm Austin Holloman. Like the video, subscribe. Let's get into it. So the world that we know today would be dramatically different if the Jewish population did not go to Israel, or Palestine as it was known at the time, after World War II. The modern state of Israel didn't just become a homeland, but it became a geopolitical powerhouse and reshaped the power dynamics in the Middle East and the global economy and raised religious tensions. But Israel wasn't the only option on the table. Uganda, Madagascar, parts of Australia, and parts of Siberia were once proposed as alternate Jewish homelands. And just to comment on that really quick, I doubt anybody will want to move to Siberia. But imagine instead of Tel Aviv, the world saw a Jewish capital rise in the Kenyan highlands or deep in the forests of Madagascar. And I say Kenya because at that time, Uganda and Kenya were one thing at one point. But before we go deep into it, here's another disclaimer. I know my editor already put a disclaimer on the screen, but guys, I don't hate Jews. I have Jewish friends. They know who they are. Yeah, there's two of them, but they know who they are. And at least they told me that they're Jewish. And yeah, I'm not like one of the racist white guys like, I have black friends too. Like, no, I literally have Jewish friends. I'm just giving you guys a what if scenario because I've always heard this stuff throughout high school. And I'm just wanting to start a conversation on what would the world be like if that happened? And was this done intentionally to put them in Israel to keep that area unstable? So to start off, in British East Africa, the first serious alternative to Israel was the 1903 British proposal to establish a Jewish homeland in East Africa, which I think would have been a horrible idea, and I'll tell you why. Specifically, what they called Uganda, mistakenly, but it was actually Kenya. But as we know, colonial powers don't really give a damn about the places that they go to, so they called Kenya Uganda at the time. That's why I said it was one at the same time. Theodore Herzl presented the idea after the brutal Kishinev programs, and while many Zionists rejected it, others saw it as a temporary lifeline to protect the Jewish population in Europe. British colonial leaders saw the plan as a way to develop unused land in Kenya and keep Jewish refugees out of the United Kingdom. But white settlers and local African communities opposed this idea. Had the Jews accepted this offer and settled in Kenya's highlands, they would have faced future conflict with both British settlers and tribes like the Maasai, especially during events like the Mau Mau uprising. And to give my own opinion on that, if this was in the actual Uganda as well, because they called it the Uganda plan, there was somebody named Idi Amin that came around after World War II. And he did basically what Hitler did to the Jews, but I mean, he didn't exterminate them, but he expelled them. And that's what Hitler wanted to do to the Jews, was send them to Madagascar. And I believe that if they would have sent them to Uganda, the same thing would have happened to them, because the stuff that Idi Amin was saying about the Indians living in Uganda was the same thing that Hitler was saying about the Jews, or at least they shared some ideologies against those different groups of people. Let me know what you think in the comments. And to elaborate on that even further, as I said before, Hitler had a plan to send the Jews to Madagascar. And this is actually something that they don't really talk about too much. I think I heard this literally one time throughout all the way to 12th grade in high school. But this is a plan that was considered, but obviously that's not what was taking place. So Madagascar was the alternate Jewish homeland that Hitler proposed during not the time of Nazi Germany as a mass deportation site during World War II. They planned to dump the entire European Jewish population there after they conquered France, and they would use the island as a isolated prison colony for Jews. Earlier, French and Polish officials also surveyed the island and found it could barely support 25,000 people, far too small for Europe's Jewish population. Now, I'm not sure why they would say that, but today Madagascar is home to more than 25,000 people. Now, the reason that Hitler never actually expelled the Jews to Madagascar is because French and Polish officials actually went and surveyed the land of Madagascar, and they claimed that less than 7,000 families or 25,000 people could not live in Madagascar. And if they did go to Madagascar, the Jews would have faced disease, starvation, and hostility from the native Malagasy population, who were already resisting the French colonial rule that was there at that time. So this kind of makes me ask a question that instead of, because Hitler ended up, as we know today, trying to exterminate all the European Jews, if the French and Polish said that they would have died anyway whenever they got there, what would have been the difference? Why did he still have to go the harshest route and try to exterminate an entire group of people? But I'll let you guys decide that in the comments. So since those are the two alternate homelands that we know about were proposed to move the Jews to, what would have happened if they actually would have went to Kenya or Madagascar instead of going to the Middle East where they are today? A Jewish homeland in East Africa would have followed a colonial pattern, putting Jews in direct tense indigenous populations, as I said before, and Jews would have been seen as another settler elite like the British, like prompting nationalist resistance during Africa's decolonization, which is what I said before. Whenever Uganda was decolonized, Idi Amin did his own thing, right? And the same thing happened in Zimbabwe. So that would have put them in another area where they could have been subjugated and possibly exterminated. Without ties to biblical lands, Hebrew nationalism might have not taken root. Yiddish or English could have been dominated, weakening Israel's cultural identity. By the 1960s, as other African nations won independence, this Jewish enclave would face demands for land reform or majority rule, similar to what happened in Rhodesia or Zimbabwe, as I just said. But surprisingly, there was also a Soviet proposal, which was a failed proposal for an alternate Jewish homeland. The Soviet Union once tried its own Jewish homeland in Siberia. In the 1930s, Joseph Stalin set up Birobidzhan near the Chinese border, promoting Yiddish language and socialist values. But harsh winters, isolation, and Stalin's very well-known purges made it a failed project. Most Jews either never came or quickly left. Rightfully so, because if you know Joseph Stalin's history about his purges, I don't think anybody should have wanted to go to Russia during that time. If this Siberian homeland would have succeeded, Jews may have been speaking Yiddish today and not Hebrew. They'd be loyal Soviets, not Zionists, and stuck behind the Iron Curtain instead of thriving as they are today in Tel Aviv. So no matter where they would have went, if they would have never created the state of Israel inside of Palestine, what effect would that have on the Middle East today? Without Israel, the modern Middle East would look a lot different, of course. Possibly more stable or just unstable, but in another way. There would be no 1948 war, no Palestine displacement, no pan-Arab unity against a Jewish state, and perhaps fewer excuses for dictators to suppress dissent in other Arab states in the Middle East. U.S. foreign policy, the Cold War, and even the 1973 oil crisis would shift dramatically, since many of those events centered on American support for Israel. And here I'm going to put a clip where Joe Biden says that the United States would have created a Israeli state even if they would have never taken themselves there.
If we look at the Middle East, I think it's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel.
Instead of Hezbollah and Hamas, Arab youth might have focused on economic reform or ousting corrupt regimes, not fighting endless wars with a Zionist state. Let me know what you think in the comments. So with all that being said, Could any other homeland in the world have actually been the equivalent to what Israel is today? No other offer that was given to the Jews to have a new alternate homeland could have offered what Israel did, which was global backing, biblical roots, military autonomy, and mass immigration potential. Uganda or Madagascar would have left Jews isolated, surrounded by hostile populations, dependent on colonial powers, and politically unstable. And honestly, I think that if they went to Madagascar, I don't think the natives would have been a problem there because they were all, I mean, if you look at the state of Madagascar today, I don't think that would have been an issue. The Siberian proposal lacked the religious connection, international recognition, or long-term viability to serve as a true homeland. If you don't know what Siberia is, it's one of the coldest places on the world, and it's pretty much a barren wasteland. The Uganda plan may have produced a Jewish Rhodesia, and Siberia wasn't going to work anyway. And Israel, as we know it today, became a nuclear power, a tech hub, and a spiritual capital for Jews to return to a place that they can call home and connect amongst their own community. So what did the world lose and gain, according to some people, when Israel was created as the state for the Jewish population? Without Israel, the world may have avoided some wars, but it also might have lost a central hub of Jewish resilience, innovation, and identity. Alternate homelands might have saved some lives, but none of them would have created the same global presence politically, culturally, or religiously. At the same time, millions of Palestinians might have homes still to this day, and the Arab world may have not spent decades at war, but in the end, the question isn't where Jews could have gone, it's whether anywhere else could have truly became theirs the way Israel did. I'm Austin Holloman. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And like I said, I'm not taking sides on this. I just thought it'd be a good conversation. I have no sides that I take on the war in the Middle East amongst Israel and the other countries. I'm just your only friend, your new reporter. So if you like that video, like the video, comment, subscribe. I love you guys. I'll see you guys next time.